This video of the Forth and Clyde Canal covers the area around the Maryhill Locks. The Forth and Clyde Canal was Britain's first sea-to-sea canal and was built between 1768 and 1790, so over 22 years, including 7 years when work was suspended due to lack of funds. It was unique in Britain in being able to handle both seagoing and land-based industrial traffic. The canal was built from east to west, and so this section of the canal was one of the latest sections to be built. Originally opposed by Glasgow merchants, their opposition was sated by the promise and completion of the Glasgow link. Although primarily for trade, a passenger service was introduced in 1783. Steam paddle boats were introduced around 1790, a first for a canal, and in 1856 puffers with propellers were introduced. In the mid-20th century, the canal began to decline, and in 1963 it was effectively permanently closed by the building of a low bridge on the A80, Glasgow to Stirling Road, although parts had already been sold off in the early 60s. The canals started being used as rubbish tips with overall deterioration. However, as early as the 70s, there was interest in restoring the canals, and clean-up squads removed thousands of tons of rubbish. I joined the joggers, walkers and dog walkers to walk along the canal from the Cleveland Road Bridge and head east. Continuing the saga of the restorations, initially there was strong resistance and calls for filling in the canals because of the dangers. There had been some young boys drowning. But the argument that restoration would provide a safer environment won. Restorations began in the west as bowling had been spared and was still functional. Considerable refurbishment was required all along the canal. The Forth and Clyde Canal Society was formed in April 1980 and was instrumental in coordinating the restoration. Major investment was required in the Falkirk area to recreate access around the M80 road and to restore access to Edinburgh via the Union Canal, where the locks had been destroyed and filled in. New access to the River Forth at Grangemouth was also required, as the original route had been repurposed. This major investment, which included the Falkirk Wheel, will be covered in a later video. The canal had to cross the River Kelvin, and an aqueduct was built across the river. The aqueduct was part of the same construction as the 5 Maryhill Locks. The aqueduct is considered one of the finest features of the canal, built between 1787 and 1790. It consists of 4 50-foot arches. It is 400 feet long, 70 feet high, and was the largest structure of its kind in Britain at the time. It is now a scheduled monument. The 5 locks of the Maryhill Locks, locks 21 to 25 from east to west, raise the level of the canal by around 39 feet to 156 feet. This is the highest level the canal reaches, and that level is maintained for the next 15 miles as far as the Windford Lock just north of Cumbernauld. Each lock has an oval basin after the gates to allow the boats to pass each other. There was a skimmer cleaning the surface of the canal in the basin of Lock 24. I was fortunate that the skimmer seen earlier was going through Lock 25 to continue its cleaning in the next area. You can see the operator opening the sluice gates to lower the level in the lock before the gates are opened. The lock gates have been refurbished and are now kept maintained. There have only been minor changes to improve safety of operation, and the lock gates and their operation remain fundamentally the same as the original design nearly 250 years ago. The skimmer is a small boat with a grid which drags the debris onto the deck with the water draining through. The water level within the lock goes slowly down. The gates are slowly opened. The skimmer moves through the gates and starts its cleaning. Between locks 22 and 23 is a dry dock. This was built in 1789 and it was the oldest boatyard on the canal. It was initially used for the repair of canal vessels, but by the 1850s it had become a shipbuilding yard for Swan and Co. The yard was open until the 1960s and built some of the landing craft used in the D-Day landings in the Second World War. The dry dock was entered through standard lock gates, and there were tunnels for the water to drain to the lower basins. Beside Lock 21 was the White House Inn, which would have been a focal point for canal activities. It was built around the same time as the canal was built in the area and was a public house for those using the canal. For a time it served as the Maryhill post office. It has lain derelict for a significant time but was refurbished around 2013-2015 and is now used by charity Freewheel North as a community hub and bike shop. The front door was originally on the canal side, as this would be where the main customer base was. The canal now leads on to the Stockingfield Junction, where there is a branch to the Glasgow Canal.